What is up, everybody? Welcome to a Pretty Perspective podcast.
A place where we bring light to hard shit.
Welcome back, everybody. I hope everybody's doing great. It's Friday as usual. Lindsay and I are back on our shit, bringing light to hard shit. So today we are going to talk about labels and not being limited through those labels. So, the power of words, diagnosis, and self-talk. We wanted to kind of talk about this because it can be applied really anywhere in your life. But a lot of times at the gym with how we look at our bodies in the mirror and how we put ourselves down. And I think it's deeper than that, in the fact that we take what we say about each other let me back up. We take what we say about ourselves and what other people have said about us, and then we literally reflect it back to ourselves in the mirror by whatever it is that we say negatively about ourselves. So, just kind of wanting to shine some light on how you can redirect those thoughts, because a lot of times they are happening and we don't even know it because it's just so natural to put ourselves down. So maybe, I don't know, we could both kind of like share. We could be vulnerable for a second and share some things maybe that you feel labeled by or categorized by, or how do you want to give an example of that for yourself in your own life?
Yeah, I think what you said, about how these labels can show up in the way like we identify ourselves or we label ourselves, but this can also come from outside sources and things that we're told, and the way other people label us that then trickle into the way that we think about ourselves and label ourselves. And so for me, there's quite a few examples that I could use from like my upbringing, but I think one that I would want to talk about is how I was always called sensitive, and not in a positive way. Like, oh, sweetie, you're so sensitive. That's so great. More like you're too sensitive. Like you need to get your shit together type of talk. And so over time, I identified myself as somebody who's too sensitive. And I thought that was a weakness. What were you gonna say?
I want to give people like a real life example. Like, can you extract some kind of like scenario, like
Yeah.
give an example of something you would bring up to the people that you were being told you were being sensitive about? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So I think it would happen a lot when I would be sharing my emotions towards something. So if X event happened, say I couldn't go to the movies with my friend, or I couldn't go to the
Yes.
movies with my parent, and I expressed my emotions and my feelings in regards to that and being hurt, I would be told that I'm too sensitive and that I need to get over it. So
Yep.
I think I carried that, and I feel like a lot of us, our tendency is to overcorrect potentially. And so then I wanted to be hard, right? I wanted to harden up. I wanted to, oh,
Be tough. You don't want to be sensitive. You want to be tough.
you bailed on me? I don't care. Oh,
Right. I
you
can handle it.
I don't care. Or you said something disrespectful to me? Don't care. Just like brush it off. And I think there's pros to being sensitive and there's pros to being tough, right? There should be a nice balance. But I think that's one example in my life where I really had to accept my sensitivity as a strength rather than a weakness, right? And so now I look at my sensitivity, and now that I'm older and I understand these things, I look at it and I know that I feel deeply. I have empathy. I can feel others' feelings, like it's a strength. Like, yeah, do I get sad maybe around things that other people might not get sad about? Sure, but I'm not going to focus on the negative aspect of it. I'm going to focus on, my sensitivity gives me a way to connect with other people, to understand other people. And I think we'll kind of get into both of these avenues here, but also just being able to take that feedback of being sensitive. I'm now able to, in certain situations, say a professional situation, if something happens at work and I'm hurt and I can check myself and be like, okay, I might be feeling a little bit sensitive right now, but in this moment, that needs to be put aside for a second, and I need to handle this in a more professional manner, right? So there can be, I think there's two sides of this, is what I'm trying to get at, is you can have labels about yourself that can be true, and you can take them and you can use them as information in how you want to handle certain situations, knowing that about yourself. And you can also take that same label or that same characteristic or behavior about yourself, and instead of focusing on all the negative things about it, use it as your strength.
How did you learn how to start doing that? I think it's important to talk about, like, we're bringing this, we'll call it a problem for conversation's sake. We're bringing this problem of over identifying and trying to prove these identities wrong, right? So we get caught up in what that is. So how did you start recognizing and then knowing, like, how did you know how to redirect it? Like, give us some direction on, like, if somebody resonates with you, what should they start doing to not sit in that label or that identity or that space? Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think my answer will be different than how I came about it. I feel like with the way I came about it, it was kind of observational, kind of like we've talked about on this podcast multiple times. Both of us are pretty good at picking up on patterns. I'm very observational, seeing other people or even on the internet, just like soaking up information and being able to utilize what I'm learning for myself. And so lots of just like self-discovery and like learning like personal development books and things like that nature where it just it taught me that I'm not, first of all, I'm not alone, and none of you are alone in the labels that you are carrying. So, talking with other people who have also been labeled sensitive and realizing, because sometimes it's easier to look at somebody else and be like, "Oh, you're called sensitive? Like that's not a big deal. Like you're so empathetic. Like I always would want to come to you and talk to you if something was wrong." When you see it on someone else, it's like, "Okay, like I can accept that about myself too." Right? If you can accept it on someone else, why can't you accept it for yourself? So I think that was one thing. And then just like personal development podcasts and books and stuff, I just came to the conclusion that my sensitive side is a powerful thing. But for other people, I think those things can still apply, doing some personal development, reading books and such. But I think also just look at whatever label you're struggling with as a negative part of you. If there's a label that you're carrying that you feel negative towards, look at that, journal about it, and maybe discover for yourself what positives come from it, and then hang on to that instead. I feel like there's always two sides to it. Just like my sensitivity is, it can get in the way in some situations, arguments with my boyfriend, my sensitivity can get in the way. But in other situations, when a friend comes to me and they're down, it comes in handy. My empathy comes in handy, especially in the work I do as a coach. So, and another example in that coaching realm is growing up, I always wanted to be friends with or date people I could fix. And my dad always told me I got it from him. That was it, right? He's like, "Oh yeah, you get that from me." That was the end of the conversation. But then what I came to realize is I just want to help people. I want to help
Mhm.
people. I want to help people by the experiences that I've had, the things that I've learned and observing. I want to help people become their better selves. So what did I do? Instead of always being like, "Oh yeah, I just always find friends and partners that I want to fix. Everyone's a mess. Everyone around me is a mess." I thought, you know what? Maybe I'll turn this into a career and let people come to me for help instead of, putting my hand in places it doesn't belong. And now I'm a really good coach. And so it's like there's always two sides of it. And I think discovering that for yourself and whatever label you carry is super important. Was that helpful, do you think?
Yeah, yeah, totally, totally. I'll circle back to something you said earlier about, hanging on to something that someone said to you, like carrying something that somebody else said, right? As much as we like to believe, there are three universal things that I'm finding out as I get older, where the general consensus of people say that they agree with something, but they don't actually abide by it when the tables are turned, right? So those three things, what I mean by that is like we all genuinely agree that none of us are inherently bad, right? Would you agree with that?
Yeah.
If we're not worked up about anything, we could sit at a table across from each other and say, you know what, at the end of the day, I think we're all really good people. We're brought here for good, whatever, there's anomalies and all those kinds of things. Bad is going to exist, yada yada. I'm not trying to get that crazy about it. So we don't believe that anybody is inherently bad. I myself, I can't speak for everybody, but it seems to be a generalized thing when you're talking about feelings, where normally, most of the time, nobody's ever coming at you from a place of ill will or malice, right? It's perspective and tone that's being delivered at the time. And then the other thing is that we all seem to agree on is that somebody else's response to us is not our responsibility, right? But all three of those things, when they are turned around on the self, we get very defensive about all three of those things. So a, a part of like fixing what somebody has said about you, the thing that they said about you is about them.
Mm.
It's not even about you. And so if we can dive into and really practice and integrate and have this actual for real mindset that we sit in where, okay, I believe that Joe Schmo feels that way, but I believe that they believe that. I don't have to believe that. I can take a look at it. I've been in situations where people I look up to are like, hey, I noticed X, Y, and Z about you, yada, yada. It feels like a judgment. It feels like this thing. But when I step back out of my own emotions because I know that they're not coming from a bad place, then that allows me to kind of like take inventory of what it is they actually said. So now it's a data point
Mm.
rather than an emotional spiral or something that I carry with me into the gym. I know what I look like. We all know what I look like. I have been reprimanded for what I look like my whole since I started getting tattoos, right? So it's like my whole life I've had to deal with people telling me who they think I am based on the tattoos that I have. I've literally had clients be like, "Oh, your parents must be so proud." I'm sorry. Who asked you? And the last time I checked, I got these for me, not you anyways. Being asked to cover them up because of a job. I've had conversations with HR where I'm like, I just, real quick, I want you out loud to tell me that you need me to change who I am in order to have this position. The way that I do the position, how I execute and how I take care of my clients has nothing to do with what it is you're talking to me about right now. I want you to say it out loud so that I know that we're on the same page right now, that you want me to change who I am in order to keep my job. So it Yes, that answered the question. Yes, it's applicable. Sometimes it jumps up and bites you in the butt because it can be emotional. It is tied to emotional things you were probably told as a kid, and then that ties back into inner child stuff, and then we go right back into that. Um, and a little bit deeper of a layer is diagnosis versus definition, right? So where do you draw the line with being told that you have ADHD and you got to be on medication for the rest of your life? Or you take that diagnosis and you sit in it for a little bit, you remove the judgment of it, get on medication. That's what I did. And I know there's a few people who've listened to this already about my journey with ADHD in my brain. I got on medication because I surrendered to the fact that I needed help because I didn't know what was going on up here. And so once I got on the medication, I sat in a space where I was able to like manage everything in a more graceful way. I'll put it that way. But while I was doing that, and to circle back and double down on what you said about us being aware, while I was in that space on the medication, I like in my body somatically tried to remember what it felt like to have these thoughts and emotions managed with the medication. Does that make sense?
Mhm.
So it's like this zone 2 training that we're doing. I'm physically trying to remember what it feels like to
Yeah.
be in zone 2 while applying other things. So I just so happen to be somebody with a gift of being self-aware. So I weaned myself off the medicine. And when moments presented themselves that pressed up against me without the medication, I'm like, okay, 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 okay. This is it's happening right now. Like, how do I get my body back to feeling that thing without the medication? So basically, I am going from diagnosis and definition to individualism.
Yeah, that's
And I
really,
don't know if that's hard to follow what I just said, but
to me, that makes perfect sense. And I think it ties into, I want to share in the show notes a YouTube video
hmm.
from the Model Health Show with Sean Stevenson, whom I'm obsessed with. And had a guest speaker on Bruce Lipton, a very
Mm,
famous
mhm,
biologist.
mhm.
And this podcast is kind of about epigenetics. And I
Cool.
think this plays a huge role in what we're talking about today when it comes to the power of words and the power of our mind. And he talks about how when everyone else, when all the other scientists were like super into like genes control what happens to us, like our genes express like the diseases and illnesses that we will have, like when everyone else was kind of focused on like figuring that out, he was over here and he's like, wait a second, he's like, I don't think so. He's like, the environment that you're in, not just around you, but your perceived environment actually dictates what cells will come into play, what genes will come into play. And so he relates it to so he actually found that the cell membrane is more like the brain of the cell, not the nucleus, which we were
Mhm.
taught in school. The cell membrane um, is a semiconductor. It has gates and channels to let things in and out. And your genes are actually just a blueprint to make proteins. Okay. And so if your cell has these channels and these gates and pathways, the question he then went to is like, if our cells are inside our body, how are they going to know what's going on in the environment around us, right? And that's where the mind comes in because it's perceived from our central nervous system. So that's where I'm like kind of tying it into this whole ADHD thing that you have because yeah, you took medicine, you figured out inside what the perceived environment would look like with the help of the drug, you were able to remember that perceived environment. And then even without the medicine, you're able to control your cells.
What a wonderful and really beautiful bridge to that, because well, there's science behind what it is that I'm talking about now, right? Like it's I'm not just squeaking a flower out of nowhere, right? That really well put.
Yeah, and it's cool because in the same podcast that he was talking about all of this, he mentions how before he realized this, he had no sense of spirituality. When he realized this, he became a spiritual scientist.
Mm.
He believed in something bigger than us because it's you can't break it down to just science. And this podcast just when I listen to it, it's one of those things where you listen to it and you're like, I knew it. I freaking knew it. I freaking
Yes.
knew this. I knew that I am the way I am because I never let a diagnosis take over my life, right? I was diagnosed with hypothyroidism and I said, mm-mm, not for me. No, no, no. Was it true? Yes. Is it true anymore? No, because that's what I decided. I
And
decided that for myself.
yes, and people don't want to accept the fact that, because okay, once you get to where you and I are at with our bodies and whatever, that like just so everybody knows, and it takes a little bit of work to get here, but we're fully aware of what our actions are and our responsibilities of who we are as a person. Because without taking the responsibility for our actions, we would never have been able to look at these downfalls that we have. When really we just looked at it and we're like, okay, I mean, I can't speak for you, but it sounds, we resonate a lot with the same stuff. So it's like, here's this pattern of being told that we're too much, or
Mhm.
this pattern of being told that we need to be put in a box. So it's like, that don't feel right to me though. So we just took it a little bit further, but what that requires you to do is it requires you to take responsibility. And that's a whole different conversation about it's easier to lean into and define yourself too, right? We're talking about a very nuanced thing right here where for most people, majority of people, it's going to be easier to identify through that label than it is going to be to try and figure out why it actually doesn't fit. Or I would argue the most difficult task would be turning that thing into a superpower and excuse my language and saying, fuck those people. Look at me and what I get to do actually. And I'm not on medication. I'm not taking any of this to heart. I took what I heard from you, took inventory of where I feel it within myself and whether or not that's true within myself. Because I'm allowed to do that. I think there's something to be said that we're not saying don't listen to anybody. It is human to want to belong. It is survival to belong. We've talked about that before, where if we cease to belong, we cease to exist. And so when we do ask people, or some people, the people close to us have an input, or like, hey man, maybe get your life together a little bit. There's probably some truth in that because people are resonating with you. And that's why it's so important to to surround yourself with people who do support you, but can hold an open space to challenge you through the lens and that perceived environment of love and safety and what all that is. And I think that's a huge missing component for a lot of people. I think it's, I think we are, I think we are lone wolves in our own lives trying to figure out how to carry an entire load of stuff on our back that's not ours.
Yeah.
And so when you and I sit and talk about this and we open up things and we bring light to certain stuff, um, it kind of gives permission. I mean, I hope it doesn't kind of. I hope that it gives everybody permission to, like, for real, reach out on Instagram or something and be like, I need to talk about something. Or I'm really good at, it's not that I don't care about what you're saying, but I'm really good at receiving what it is you have to say, dump it on me, because I'll leave it at the door 5 seconds later because it's not mine. But I'll sit and listen. I'll sit and give you what it is that you need and want to do these things. But I think what you to take further also what you were just saying and what he's saying back to that membrane of the nucleus, right? God, I love that you said that because just visually for people, if you're having a hard time following that, the membrane is what's like protecting that cell, right? And so the holes that she's talking about is how the information gets into that cell, and then that's how that cell reacts to what the information is, right? Just like we have a bunch of cells, we do the same thing as humans. Lindsay's going to say something to me. I'm going to absorb it through the holes that I have, my eyes, my ears, and then I'm going to process that and then I'm going to act accordingly. It's the same thing. So where I'm going with this is that affirmations and like this funny, I think, thing where we are subconsciously putting people down for affirmations and almost making affirmations stupid and tacky. Affirmations are not delusional, and they're not a delusion. They are the architecture of the cell that has that membrane around it. And so when you feed that cell something positive, I mean, we all know this, right? You give something positive frequency, it's going to expand. The only thing that's real is love. Love is only ever expanding. Anything that is compressing is either made up or a false belief.
Mm.
But now we're dealing with logically knowing something and somatically knowing something. And for most of us, these two things are not connected. And a lot of times, logically, we know something. It's when somebody says, I just can't get over this habit or this loop or this whatever. It's because logically, you know you're supposed to be doing the thing it is that you're doing. But your body and your body and your nervous system haven't caught up to that logic yet because you haven't made it apparent to your body to feel safe enough to believe in something outside of that false belief.
Yes.
So bravo, bridging that. That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Plus, what he's talking about is totally true. You guys look into epigenetics at all, think about it like this. Every single one of us who's here on this planet right now, We were an egg inside of our mother while our mother was a baby inside of her mother, which was our grandmother. So we inherently can't argue with this because it's science. You inherit the stressors and the things that were going on while your grandma was carrying your mother.
Yeah.
Because women, if you didn't know this, fun fact, are born with all the eggs they're ever going to have in their whole life. So whether or not you make it here or not, you still absorbed all that energy that your parents were giving you. And so that's where predisposition comes in and what you're talking about with DNA and the cells taking on that survival mechanism of, whoa, I'm not even out of the body yet, but there's something here that I need to be hyper vigilant about because when I get out, I need to be ready for that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, does everybody see how this dialogue it's systemic?
Yeah. It's so deep. I think to kind of go back to pair what we just learned about the cells and our mind and the power of the decisions we make. And we pair it with the fact that, let me think here. Okay, first of all, just a quick statistic, just so everybody knows. 90% of illness relates to stress. 90% of illness relates to stress. So if you aren't doing some sort of stress management for yourself, I think that's the number one thing you could do for your health immediately. And that means something that turns your brain down. I that's
Yes.
kind of how I feel. Like it turns everything down. It gets rid of the chatter in the mind. And you focus on maybe just like one thing in your body that could be so beneficial for your health. Back to when you're talking about how we are similar to cells. I just kind of like a little side note, I always think about that. I always think about like, what if we're just we are, we like, I always just think about like, what if we're just cells on like a giant's fingertip or something?
Oh, right. Uh-huh.
Like, I always just think about that because I'm like, we work just like cells work. Cells work just like we work. And it's funny because this biologist actually bought a guide to, or he just bought his first computer, like Mac computer, and he had a book to teach him how to use it. And he's up at 2 a.m. journaling, trying to figure out all this stuff. And he writes something down and he's like, I've seen that before. Like it's his own original thought he writes down in terms of cells and genes. He writes it down and then he's like, wait, I've heard that before. And he's like, that's in the manual to my freaking computer. And it's so crazy that humans designed a computer to work a certain way that's actually the exact same way that we work, but they didn't know it. And then we had to like loop back around and use a computer manual to figure out how our genes are expressed. It's just like so backwards, but I always like to, there's certain laws of the universe that can just be applied to literally anything. And I just think that's so cool. And the closer you can get to understanding those laws, I feel like the little bit more like life makes sense. So I just wanted to like touch on like all of those pieces, like cells, humans, computers. It's just all the same thing.
One of our first episodes, it was a handstand episode when we were introducing something we were working on that maybe was difficult to execute. And that's when I'm like, man, that's when I first started discovering how my brain worked. And in that episode, I mean, you guys can go back and hear it, where I say it's like I'm literally reprogramming a computer while it's still on.
Yeah. Yes.
So it's like yeah, a lot of times, and I've experienced that with my conversations with ChatGPT, where it'll say that I'm doing something that's actually pretty like elevated or advanced or accelerated, and that the thing that it's commenting on is normal to me, but is wildly advanced to somebody else.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that that's what I was doing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's also too, like it can even tie back into, a lot of times people are pointing out stuff that they don't like about you and breaking you down because you you possess something that that person wants and they're envious of what it is that you have. You know, there's a famous saying, and I love this, especially since we're getting into high rocks and we're getting into like people motivating themselves, whatever. You said it to me, and I think I've never said it because it makes me uncomfortable still to think about, but you said it to me during like when we were deciding how we want the flow of our conversation to go. And I'm like, I don't want us to have to like apologize all the time for what it is that we're saying, right? And then one day you were like, you know, the day we have haters is the day we succeed, you know?
It feels
Not
that
that we're trying to have haters, but it's important to have that friction,
way. Mhm.
you know, and part of that friction can be this universal thing that you're talking about, and I think it could be tied into everything that we're talking about. What you're asking people to do is surrender to something that just is. And when we have this innate, incessant need to be right all the time, that's just not, you don't have the capacity to understand what that even means.
Yeah. I don't need to be right.
Oh my God. And nor do I want to be, because if I was right all the time, my life would be miserable.
Yeah.
As
Yeah.
much as I catastrophize, are you kidding me? That's why I loved we talked about it in connecting spiritually, where it's like, when has your day ever gone as bad as you have thought up in your head?
And if it is, it's because you're stuck there. This is how we can kind of wrap our way into affirmations and the way we think about our day because I witness people who have shitty days day after day after day after day. And it's because the words that they use from the time they wake up to the time they go to bed are negative. They're not speaking life, they're speaking about
Ah,
death. They're speaking about I woke up tired. Oh, my coffee's not right. Oh my gosh, I had to get gas on my way to work. Now I'm at work. And then they're like, oh, I have so much to do after work. And it's like, bro, we are all busy. Okay.
you get to do that.
You have a job. There's people out there that don't have a job. You woke up this morning. There's somebody out there that didn't wake up this morning. And it's like, I understand. I have bad days too. I have days where I'm just like, this sucks. But I have started every single morning and now it's absolutely habitual. Like it's part of my subconscious routine now. Every morning I start with gratitude and I can literally feel it change on the days I wake up in a bad mood. I can like physically feel it through my whole body because I'm so in tune with it now. So all every morning I wake up, I make my breakfast because you should eat 30 grams of protein upon waking up. I eat my breakfast, and then since I'm studying the Bible right now, I read the Bible, and then I go on a 1 mile walk and start off with gratitude. Where it leads me after that, who knows? But I start with gratitude after that. And like I said, I can feel it changing in me. And I think that is testimony to how powerful words are, because I'm also saying this out loud. I think that's a huge I don't know how much of a difference it would make if you looked at it scientifically, if you like did a study. I don't know how much difference it makes to say words out loud, but
It's a lot.
yeah, I feel like it is. But it's also a good way to keep yourself on topic because if you're trying to do your gratitude or affirmations in your head, your thoughts are going to there's still other thoughts coming in, and it's going to be hard to organize them and keep them on track. So when you're doing your gratitude out loud, when you're doing your affirmations as well out loud, it kind of also helps you just stay on the right path as well as adding that other layer of like that energy exchange when you're putting that gratitude literally out with frequency of your voice. um so yeah, starting your day with gratitude can complete I don't have bad days anymore. I literally don't. Like shitty things can happen during my day, but I literally cannot recall to you the last time I had a fully bad entire 24 hours. I can't because that's not my reality.
Right. And your reality is your perceived experience, right? And earlier you were talking about um the cell not knowing the difference, right? So that's an actually measurable thing as well. Joe Dispenza talks about it a lot. If you guys aren't familiar with Joe Dispenza, he deals a lot with like neuroscience and a lot of what um we touch on a lot. And he was one of the first people I heard say, the brain doesn't know the difference between whether or not you've actually received the thing it is that you're seeking and whether or not you have it. But if you choose to feel and believe that that thing already exists, if you celebrate the thing it is that you're working towards before you have it and you live your life as though that thing is already there, you don't wait for the permission of it to show up before you celebrate it. You celebrate it because you already know it's true to be yours, right? And that's really hard to wrap your mind around. And I think it's important to mention that it could sound like delusion, but we're talking about intentionally putting energy behind certain things. And the reason why it doesn't make sense right now for most of us is because we're so deep into negatively talking about ourselves that it just doesn't even make sense to introduce that. I too, 3 or 4 months ago, when I started getting into all of this, I decided one day I was like, oh my gosh, I literally have no reason at all to not have a good day. And I haven't not had a good day, right? Because I change. Typically people wait for an event to change them.
Mm.
An event happens for me, and I am the field that directs how it is going to affect me. I have become the field. I do not let the field, and I could, the last couple of weeks for me have been very trying in some things that have just come up circumstantially. And I, honest to God, I think it might seem like the smallest lesson, but it's actually not, where I've been working on, what is this doing for me instead of, man, this happened to me and this is inconvenient and this is that, and this is the other, and this is whatever. But I'm literally to the point now where it's almost automatic, like you were talking about, like it's a subconscious. It's getting to the point where I don't even have to think about reframing anymore because I just automatically, like, something is presented to me and I do something with it and then I move on. I don't get stuck on it. I don't judge myself for it. And then also, I love that you said that you breathe life into it. Um, did you get that from scripture?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So I lit up when she said that because I one of the times that I dropped into church, the theme that day was, do you speak life into your life or do you speak death into it? So two different things from scripture here that I would love, 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 love to point out is what she's just said, because there is power behind words. You can look that up as well. There's a rice experiment where they add water to rice and they label each jar love, hate, and ignore. And each jar is affected by the word that you say to it. And it actually it proves itself because of the color that the rice turns. Go watch, it's a really quick video on YouTube that you can watch about it. But the other thing I want to mention about judgment that comes from scripture as well, and I want to remind everybody that I'm not a religious person, but I love scripture. And I love the story of Mary, because the story of Mary reminds us that he who is without sin may cast the first stone. So when you're labeling somebody something else, or you're applying a stigmatism to somebody else, that is you casting that stone as if you walk around and you don't have anything wrong with you. That's literally what that saying means. It's a much deeper story than that. But when you just break it down to the blueprint of what the message is, it's, who are you to think you're better? You're not. And that is a universal truth with all of us. And that's what we mean when we say remove judgment from something and instead approach it with, can you share with me how you got there? I'm really trying to understand why there's friction here for me. And maybe, again, I know what I look like. I know what my hair looks like. I know what I talk like. I know what I do. I know how I move. And I know what I'm stigmatized as a lot of the time. And I'm not saying it happens overnight, but there is a lot of self reclamation that you have to also come to, that's tied to this intrinsic value. If I use that word one more time in any one of these episodes, I'm going to lose my mind. But it's true. It's like looking at who you are in the mirror and just saying, you know what, I like that about me. And then you lean into it so fucking hard, it's loud, and then nobody can look away. And then you want to know what happens? Instead of judging you, people walk up to you and they go, how are you doing that?
Hmm.
I've noticed that you've changed. And they're not even talking about the actions, they're talking about the resonance that authenticity emits. Okay. When you are your authentic self, when you actually lean into these labels that are being told and you learn about them, you actually get to experience what it is to love yourself on the highest frequency. And the byproduct of that is that you're leading by example. And sometimes it takes a little while and it's not this pretty applause and it's not this thing. It's my first experience with it was a couple weeks ago. I had something happen and I literally metabolize stuff in the gym now. And I got to the gym and I'm scattered and I'm like, okay, I know my nervous system pretty well. I need to go through movements that are going to pull me back into my body. So heavy carries, slow breathing. And I was just going through a routine that I don't usually practice, but I'm going through this routine and I'm actually really having a hard time up here in these movements and just I'm just trying to get through the movements. And I had this woman approach me and she goes, "What are you doing right now?" She goes, "I have never," and I'm like, "I'm hurting." But it was the first time that I was outwardly expressing grief and turmoil through action. And someone noticed. And they thought that it was impressive. They didn't know that I was suffering. They didn't know that I was struggling. They didn't know that I was scattered. What they saw was the what they saw was me regaining control of the wheel of my own car.
Yeah. And while you're saying this, I'm thinking like I feel like sometimes people think that they're in control when they hang on to whatever it is, the label.
Disproving. That's a form of control.
Yeah, they think that yeah, so like if you're diagnosed with something or you're labeled with something, you think you have control over it if you hang on to it and you live by that. But you can have control by turning it into something positive, like Aisha's talking about, taking that grief and going to the gym, being authentically her, not caring what other people think about it, doing what she needs to do in a positive way that's helping her mind and her body, and it's helping somebody else, literally, because you're leading by example, like you're talking about that's still taking control. And so I think the first like you said, this isn't easy. Like this stuff isn't easy to do. And especially when you're in that pattern interrupt and you're trying to learn how to shift things and live more positively or whatever the point is. It can be really hard and that can make you feel out of control.
Totally, totally. The event that I keep referencing back to had me, in a mindset where, I mean, I'll just share this, and I know that this has come up a lot lately as well for me, but had I not gone to the gym and metabolized it in that way, like I wasn't trying to perform, I wasn't trying to do anything. I was just trying to get back in my body. I was trying to get back into my right self. I was trying to get back into heaven.
Mhm.
And it was either I go to the gym and I do that, or I jump back into this behavior of drinking so that I may numb it and look away from it and put it down in that way. Because I'm going to be honest with you, like I would rather,
Oh yeah, yeah.
but I have so much evidence in my life that that doesn't work anymore. That now I'm more willing to be uncomfortable processing something in front of other people in the way that I did it at the gym than I am to go sit down and talk about it like you and I do at the bar to people who don't care about me, to numbing something and not actually looking at it and processing it and letting it out of my body, which then compound interest of that, we all know what that means. That means I'm going to get sick later. That means like some kind of something is going to manifest itself through my body because I didn't honor it.
Yeah.
And really that's all you're doing. You're honoring these feelings that come through and that's all your body wants to do. And that's all it takes to gap that bridge from here to here. a lot of times stuff just comes up through all of what it is that we're talking about in this episode, and it comes up because not because it wants to be understood, but it just wants to be seen and let go.
Yeah.
Let go and let God, right? Let go and let God. So look at it, honor it, cry about it, whatever you got to do about it. And then again, circle back to the connecting spiritually. God shows off at your weakest. So surrender, let it go. Who cares? Show everybody around you how well you can let go and let God.
Yeah. And I just want to like dial in the point. We're talking a lot about like kind of like mental things.
Yeah.
Yep. And I just truly believe so wholeheartedly that we also have this autonomy over our physical health because like
Yes.
Aisha likes to mention too, a lot of our physical symptoms and like illness is from repressing things you need to work through. And
Unresolved. You guys, every single time you don't express an emotion to its fullest expression, it gets stuck in your body. So for somebody like Lindsay and I to be sensitive, like what we're talking about, we've got something to say about everything almost all the goddamn time. No offense, God, but you know, so I can't speak for Lindsay, but for me, when growing up, I was never allowed to express anything. So now here I am as an adult trying to look at these things, and it's a lot. Because on top of that, most likely you were probably never taught that it was okay to do that. So I've got all this stuff stuck in my body. So when it comes out, I refer to it as the gates are open and the fire hose is on. Like it's but we just so happen to be people who have gone through so much that we need that space for all that stuff to come out, or it's going to make us sick. And as a kid, I can attest to the fact that internally, I did not feel correct. And it showed up in so many different ways, but it was diagnosed as something, it was defined as something, I was labeled as something, and instead now I'm looking at it like, okay, I don't feel good. Not because I'm sick, because for me personally, I don't really believe in sickness. I believe that if something's affecting you genetically, it's from your lineage not working on things that need to be let go. And unfortunately, it's so deep into your family lineage that now it is actually showing up physically in um generations that we bring into the world. Does that make sense?
yeah, I think so. I think it's never too late for anybody though to try and heal themselves
No, never.
what we are talking about because like we just learned, you could have PCOS, for example.
Yep, yep.
PCOS and endometriosis are huge right now. Every woman is being diagnosed with that. Look into what that means spiritually. Look into what illness in your womb space. Look at what that means spiritually. Not just continuing to go to the gyno because the gyno doesn't have most of them aren't going to have spirituality and generational trauma in their mind. They're going to only have the cold hard facts of the human body. They're and it's so frustrating because it's all connected, but
It's on paper. They're just going to look at whatever's on paper. And to double back again, you guys, what Lindsay said earlier about that biologist and the cells, she just bridged the gap from spirituality to science for you in a very, very simple way. And if there's resistance for you looking into the spiritual side of medicine, because spirituality is medicine, it, I would argue that it's a good place to start, and you've got some other things that you need to be looking at, and that's probably also tailored into the sickness it is that you have. But how willing are you to look at what it is in front of you? How willing are you to not judge yourself? I think this gets said all the time too. How much different would your life look if you spoke to yourself the way that you speak to a loved one?
yeah. And that makes me want to say too, this is another reason why it's incredibly important to surround yourself with the right people because if you are surrounding yourself with people who only speak death into their own life.
Mm-hmm.
Girl or guy, you are going to suffer forever. Like I cannot hang out with a group of people that are only going to sit around and relate to each other about how much life sucks. Like I cannot do that. And I've learned that, especially women, we do that because at a long time ago when we used to be in tribes and the men would go and hunt and the women would be left behind, women would bond over that kind of stuff in order to feel belonging, like we've talked about. I get that. Okay, it's okay to talk to your friends about what tough shit is actually going on in your life. But like I always like to say, it should be with like a solution focused lens if that is the space you need to be in. If you need to go to your friends to talk about shit that's going wrong in your life, go at it with a solution focus because sitting in a group of friends and just complaining about how bad life sucks is making you ill. Period. It's literally making you ill and it's making your friends ill listening to you talk about all the things in your life that suck. Do something about it then. Please, 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 please. This is something that gets me so fired up, obviously.
No, and you should be fired up about it because everybody we know, because all we're being taught, and all we're being fed by media and everybody else is to sit down at the table with a problem. Okay. Now, it's true that problems can't be solved unless you talk about them, but I think there are enough problems floating around that we all just need to start sitting down at the table with a solution with each other about what it is that's going on, right? Um, to give another example for maybe people who are more analytical and less sciencey, to kind of mimic what Lindsay is saying about the cell and what that is. Another way that I understand that exact same thing is input to output. If you're sitting down at a table with a bunch of people who are negative, it's not possible really to get the output is the same, right? So the input will equal the output. Okay. So if the input is a problem and we don't, we don't have the input and we only have the problem, we need another part of the equation. We need the problem plus the solution equals the output, right? It's a mathematical equation, which is why I love the way that works because math is math is math. It maths, right? So if I have a solution, but now I'm adding, or I'm sorry, if I have a problem, but now I'm adding a solution equals the output, the output is whatever that thing is that you're looking for on the other side of the problem of that thing. I don't have an example right now, but to take it even further for what you're talking about and the people that you surround yourself with. Earlier, I used the word field, like I am the field. I do something and things follow me now. So you are creating, and scripture talks about this too, where you stack your team, right? You get people on your team who are within the same mindset, towards the same goals, doing the same kinds of things. So you create an emotional gravity field. Because if we know that these words have power to them, like we mentioned, then we know that this is where it gets woo woo, and this is where the context of words get out of place, I think, for a lot of people. But the words that you use are a spell, and that's what creates that emotional gravity field. And so it pulls people into confirmation loops. But the comfort, that word doesn't have to be positive all the time. It's a confirmation loop of negativity, or it can be a confirmation loop of productivity, right? So it's very messy what we're looking at. And that's why it's so important to get to know yourself, because and remove judgment from all these things that we keep being told that we are. Because once you do that, you get to create the field it is that you're in. And that spell is cast upon all these other people that are around you. And that's when people start to approach you and they're like, wow, I really like your energy, or I really enjoy how you do that, or I like how you carry yourself, or I want to know why you're doing that workout like that. That's a wonderful opportunity to be like, listen, if you've got the time, I can sit down and talk to you about this and where I'm at with it. Because that's all we're trying to do. We're just trying to be heard. And what a gift it is to be seen healing in real time by the people that are around us. What a gift it is to offer and serve others through leading by example.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, to kind of like tie it up too with any labels that you guys are holding on to and carrying, any identity that you're holding on to and carrying that you feel like doesn't serve you and who you want to be. Another kind of tool, I guess, that I could offer you is it's a really slight shift in the way that you speak. So
Mhm.
just because you have PCOS or whatever it is, instead of always talking about what you can't do, you can't have children because that's what the doctor told you. You can't, get off birth control because that's what can you do? Eliminating the word can't out of your vocabulary is just like what Aisha's saying. It's changing that field. Okay? The same truth could be in the middle, but you're changing the field. You're changing the kind of people and the kind of energy that are going to come towards you when you just shift from can't to I can. That simple. And I genuinely think that who I am today, if I had to pinpoint it, was probably the day I decided to stop saying can't. One
Mm.
day I was just like, why do I say that? Can't and hate. I don't say hate anymore either. I hate this, I hate that. Even if it's something like tiny, like, oh, I hate the rain. Like, I will not say that anymore. No. Like, there's
Yeah.
just no, obviously here and there it's gonna slip, but 99% of the time that just like doesn't serve you. And so I think that's another way where you can take the identity or the label or the diagnosis that you have and start to speak life into yourself, start to speak life into that identity or that label or that diagnosis, speak life into it and eliminate the judgment you have on yourself for it and create a new identity, create a new life. Like whatever you want to be, you can have it, just like Aisha said. And I think, I don't know if this is in scripture or I don't know, but I've heard it in my network and stuff. Like you would not have the desire if it wasn't already yours. You have the desire for something to be somebody because it's yours if you go get it.
Right.
So just know that. Like a year ago today, I prayed to be exactly where I am. I prayed to be I prayed to be self-employed with some money on a credit card, trying to make the dream happen. I literally prayed. I said, I pray for the courage to allow myself to trust myself and let myself rack up some debt on a credit card to make the dream happen. I prayed for that. Guess what? Now I'm panicking and I'm like, oh my God, like I can't, like, this is so scary. I have debt. Oh my God. And it's like, I literally prayed for this. It's mine. And so now the next hurdle, a year from now, I have no doubt in a year from now, I'm going to be exactly where I want to be. The path might not look the same. That's a whole other discussion, but it's mine and I know it. And that's why I'll receive it.
Well, and those thoughts beget more of those things. And it works with hate just as much as it works with love, but we're all so uncomfortable with love that we're not even willing to step in there. And one thing I want to say about that too is that that word can't. Not only do I think you need to like eliminate it, but after you're done eliminating that word too, look at, because there are things in my life that I found out in this. I don't remember where I heard it, or it's possible I even came up with it myself, but is it a can't or a won't?
For sure.
You know? And I think I did that because I was having it was when I was first starting to train people and I was offering really difficult. I had just changed up how I was going to train people and I wanted to actually challenge people. And people would look at me and say, I can't do that. Okay. It's an adult looking at me telling me they can't jump up on a 12-inch box. I go, is it a can't or a won't? And also, I know you have kids. Are you going to look at your kids and tell them that you can't jump up onto that box right now? Doubt it. So get your ass moving. You know what I mean? So it's like there is a little bit of like healthy, tough love that comes into it too, but that's not like judgment on it anymore. And also no judgment if it is a won't. to
Yeah.
find a different lane to go down to get to the thing it is that you want. And a lot of times too, when we actually see what the input is to the output it is that we want, I've said this before, we don't actually want that thing because we didn't know what it took to get there.
And that's fine.
Totally.
I
But
think
now that gives you space to work on something that aligns with you more. It's not a failure. It's not that there's something wrong with you. It's not because you have ADHD. It's not because you have an autoimmune disorder. Your body has many, 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 many signals that are redirecting you. And once you find that path, what do they say? The path only reveals itself once it disappears.
Hmm.
Yeah, chew on that one.
Yeah, I think the distinguishing, I think the dis like the I think when you distinguish is it an I can't or an I won't, it's freeing. Also,
Yes.
like truly like can't you? Or you really don't, if you really don't want it, okay, cool. That's awesome. That's a really good way, I think, for discernment in your decisions.
Yes.
Because you don't have to do what everybody else is doing. You don't even have to do what we're saying, guys, okay? Ignore us if you want, but
Totally, right?
we're
But I
just
think we all struggle with what you're talking about. I think a lot of us are afraid to bring like certain things up. I've even been going out of my way to be more vulnerable with people. One of my clients gave me this bodysuit that I have on, and I walked out today in it. I'm like, Jesus, I feel so naked. So I walk up to this girl that I kind of know, and I'm like, hey, don't lie to me. Do I look weird in this? And she's like, I kid you not. She was like, thank you so much for doing that. And I'm like, I'm just trying to be more involved with the people around me, and that was my little tiny vulnerability of the day where I'm a female to another female and we all walk around as females in the gym. We look at ourselves in the mirror. We've got some form of body dysmorphia wherever it is on our body and that we hate that we look at. And I think I was being vulnerable while also looking for validation, and for me that's okay.
yeah.
You know.
Yeah, I think that's really beautiful. Vulnerability definitely breeds connection,
Mhm.
obviously. And I love that. Like I love because I work in the public as well, and when you can just straight up be like, that was awkward. You
Right.
you say something and then you look at them and you're like, sorry, that was awkward. Like just don't like it's so fun to just like leave it out all on
I
the
don't know why I'm like this either. Oh, that's funny. I love that.
yeah.
Yay. Well, I think I have shed enough light on some isn't that uncomfortable shit for me today, but you know, um, did
I
you have
want
anything else to like add or do you have any questions?
I don't think I have any questions. I was gonna say though, I think this episode literally embodies our tagline. Like go shed some light on your own hard shit. That's
Yeah.
that's everybody's homework. Whatever hard
And
shit
turn that hard shit, ready for it, ready for it, ready for it. Turn that hard shit into a pretty perspective.
all about perspective, baby.
Let's go. Well, that
Thank you guys so much for listening. And to find more from us, you can find us on Instagram at prettyperspective_podcast and also on YouTube.
before we get ready to sign off here, remember that you are the light and you bring the glow, and we are a pretty perspective
Where we bring the light to hard shit.